Frank is, his bio is in the back there of our booklet. We've had him speak before at Lido events. You guys are in for a real treat. So again, let's give them a warm welcome again. Thank you, folks. Come on up.
You can sit next to me.
Well, she just said to me, I can sit next to her. Not in this environment. Okay, let's pull up the slides. Shall I do about 10 minutes of what you guys might be interested in?
Yeah, that'd be great.
These are some difficult times, and people have come up to me and said, as I was walking through here, that you really want to see what I have to present to you, and I'm waiting to see it come up here. Hopefully it will do so any moment now. I don't know of a time when this country's been more divided and people have been more angry and there's been a greater challenge in just about every way of American life. And as I was saying before, the humor that I tried to bring to events like this, and I try to be entertaining, it's very hard to be when things are so bad. And I've got an honest question to ask you as a way to begin this. How many of you are better off? And I'm going to do it in a general way. Raise your hands if you're better off than your parents were when they were your age. Who's better off than your parents? I'm curious, who's worse off than your parents? Anybody? You got one person back there. I will not be investing with the two of you. Now tell me the truth. Not what you want it to be, but what you actually think will be. Who believes their kids are going to be better off than them? Raise your hands. This is not that bad, but this is not representative of America at all. The highest percentage now ever recorded, 55% of parents think their kids are going to be worse off than them, and only 26% think their kids will be better off. We have a problem in this country with this pessimism, and unfortunately, I think it's deserved. Now, please keep the slides on. I don't particularly want to see me. I'd rather you see this. Everything that's written that I present to you now is meant for a purpose. And as I said, I've stopped trying to be entertaining, and I've started to try to be impactful. Your responsibility, your first responsibility, that's what people are asking of the financial services industry, and they don't feel like they're getting it right now. You realize that people don't trust the media, they don't trust politicians, they don't trust teachers, they don't trust anyone in charge anymore. And so the language becomes that much more important. It becomes that much more vital. So that should say, actually, my first responsibility. And the number one priority of people right now between 30 and 59 is financial security. Not personal security, not economic security. They want financial security. And notice that I framed it, want, need, and deserve. So I've been looking at some of the brochures out there, and honestly, some of it's not that well written. I need to be careful because you guys are sponsors, and I think you're paying for me to be here, so it's brilliant. But it isn't. And financial security is your priority. Retirement security is a necessity, and peace of mind, with the one extra word peace in there, I just realized, because peace is that important that I wrote it twice, the peace of mind you deserve. And there is a brochure actually out there that talks about the mission of a fund, and it emphasizes peace of mind. But in the end, we've changed. So we asked a question of the population, this is about 6 weeks ago, when you think of your life right now, have you changed or will you change? Here's the thing, they keep talking about this great resignation, that people are changing their jobs, and that is so minor compared to the things that are changing. I know a lot of you have real estate funds here. We're changing where we live. We're changing how we live. We're changing our friends. We're changing where we get our news. We're changing our lifestyle. It's not just how we work, but where we work. It's all different now. And so if you tell your workforce, let's go back to normal, their answer to you is no, we won't. And by the way, something I did not realize until the last few days. Starbucks is fighting a union effort. Amazon, for the first time ever, there's an Amazon unit that voted to unionize. There's 2 or 3 more. There is an Apple. And people are wondering why. Wages are up, benefits are up, people are making more money, but the truth is they're not. Because of inflation, particularly food and fuel, more people feel under more pressure now than ever before. And they see pictures of what happened in Afghanistan. They see photographs of what's happening right now in Iraq. And they feel a sense of dread for the present and for the future. And it affects me, as you know. Because if the public is unhappy, I'm unhappy as a pollster, as a focus group person. So you all know me as I come, and I'll find some way to sprinkle in a couple of jokes before we're done. But it is so hard for me to laugh. The good thing about COVID is that 55% of married couples report that their marriages got stronger because they were around. They got to re-know each other and enjoy each other again. And 25% of families blew apart because they got to re-know each other. And that's what COVID does. But I'm urging you not to talk about going back. We asked the question, I think this is so important, and it's mind-blowing. Are you invested in America's future? Well, 2/3 of people are. But is America invested in your future? 31%. If you want to understand that ugliness, that brittleness that's happening underneath us, why we're so resentful to each other, why we're so angry, this is one of the most important reasons. We think we're doing a lot for the country, but we don't think the country's doing anything for us. This is death of democracy if this continues. And it is a wider spread in the US than any country that we polled in Asia or in Europe. I saw this, and my staff looked at it and said, what's the big deal? And I was apoplectic. If you think that you're giving to your country and your country isn't giving back, it's not just resentful. You start to get violence. You start to get what we saw in our streets back in 2000 and what could come again this summer. We can live through this for a year. And by the way, I'm not supposed to be this negative. But it gets worse. Like, this is the good part of the presentation. This is the part that makes you hopeful. If this stays with us, I don't know how we turn around. I'm going to give you one other example of this. Is our political system rigged against people like you? 41% say yes. The good news is the American economy rigged against people like you. Only 35% say yes, which is why this room is so important. And we're going to talk about the war in the wealthy, and you're an expert on it. This is the opening of that. It doesn't have to be that way. We never were resentful in this country. We always wanted to be the person with the big house on the hill. We always wanted to have that nice car. It's only over the last 10 or 15 years that we started to hate each other, that we started to think, how can we damage that car? I know there are a lot of people here that decide where they're going to drive. And you're not going to use the nice car in certain neighborhoods. It wasn't that way, but unfortunately it is now. And one more before we start to have a conversation. I got a lot of stuff to show you, but fortunately we got the time. My income is not keeping up with rising costs. When the president says that we are better off, that the economy is stronger, that's not how Americans feel. And here's why. The vast majority believe that their income isn't keeping up with rising costs. And to my shock, and maybe the next slide. No, it's not, so I'm going to not do this one if I can go backwards. 50% of America, exactly 50%, either weekly or occasionally have trouble making ends meet. I want to bring that voice into this room here because I'm on your side. For those of you who are lucky enough to be representatives of a family business, and for those who want to sell to representatives of a family business, this is a great room to be in. But half of America now struggles to get into any room because of what's happening. And so when the president says that the economy is strong and everyone's back to work, everyone is back to work, but they're struggling more now than they ever have. So I got a question for you. How do you convince people? You and I have known each other for 25 years. You've been at this now for your career. Are we any further along on generating policies that will be supportive of everyone in this room than when you and I started a quarter of a century ago?
I think the short answer to that is unfortunately not. I think it's going the other direction. But you and I did work last August. It's some of the best work we ever did. We asked a lot of voter questions, and our goal is to understand the voters' attitudes toward lots of issues. But one of those issues was the wealthy. And what we asked them is, what do you think the top 10% of Americans should pay in the tax revenues in this country? So how much of the tax revenues in this country should the top 10% of Americans pay? And they said they should pay about 35% of the revenues in this country, 35%. Well, then we said, well, but the fact is they actually pay 71% of the revenues in this country. The top 10% say 71%. So we said, so what do you think about that? Do you think that's fair? And 59% said that's fair or it's not high enough. So the point is they don't care. And so we've learned not to use that argument. You can't explain fair share. You can't explain what wealthy means. We've changed it to successful. They don't care. They lump everyone into that phrase, even successful, including family businesses that we all know are successful because many of them were built on a lot of hard work and a lot of effort. So, and this is my question to you, is that, and I've asked this before, but I'll ask it in two parts. How is the attitudes in this country perpetuated by the media so anti-wealth as what we hear and what we see on our television, as well as what we see in some of the surveys?
You realize that the average journalist in this country makes about $75,000, $80,000 a year. If you work for the New York Times, you're up to $250,000, maybe $300,000 if you got a good job. Most newspapers pay a lot less than that. Probably most people in this room make a lot more money than a typical journalist. So they're resentful. They're resentful that they're covering people who are more successful than them. And my issue is, too many of you in this room do not speak up and do not speak out because you're the role model. I teach at a school called Verbum Dei. If you're from LA, you may know of it. It's one of the top Jesuit high schools in this whole area. It's one of the most successful high schools. It's right between Watts and Compton in South Central LA. This school is, the kids there, 70% of the kids that have seen someone killed, and they're 15, 16, 17 years old. How many of you in this room have seen someone actually killed? Raise your hands. 1, 2. All these kids have seen this as children. And they don't have role models. They don't have people they can look up to. Now, that school does. That school works. I want to create role models of people in this room. But you're not helping me by refusing to be interviewed. You're not helping me by keeping your success to yourself. You have to be willing to share it financially. You have to be willing to share your wisdom. You have to be willing to engage people, but it doesn't happen because you're afraid of being attacked. You're afraid of being criticized. And I understand that fear. But you know what? I was scared to death of criticizing the former president, and I think that's why I had a stroke. That my head was just exploding. This is what happened since the last time I was here. And I was unwilling to speak up. I went to him in the White House. It was the last Christmas party that he held. And after a couple hours, I finally got the guts to ask him, what does the J in Donald J. Trump stand for? You know what he told me? Genius. So obviously that's a joke. It is a joke. And I told him that joke, and this is true. I was on Air Force One. I think I brought you something from the plane. I took an extra suitcase and stole everything. If the plane could have fit in my suitcase, I would have taken the plane home too. I tell him that joke, and after about 15 seconds, he says to me, wait a minute, I am a genius. I'm thinking, you're just proving it. Of course, our president now is so old, Joe Biden is so old, it takes him an hour and a half to watch 60 Minutes. His favorite painting is The Last Supper. If you look carefully, he's the second waiter from the left. The only time Joe Biden doesn't have to pee is when he's actually peeing. I know you're going to ask me a question of whether Bernie Sanders runs again. I wanted to be Secretary of Agriculture in the Sanders administration so that I could plant those magic trees where all the free shit grows from. But on the other hand, you got Mitch McConnell went through 8 hours of open heart surgery because it took him 6 hours just to find his heart. So these are tough times. And one more for you as a pollster. We surveyed 1,000 women last year, and we asked them, would you have relations with Bill Clinton if you could? 21% said never again. So if you can go back, this is the best, by the way, seriously, like this is the best I can do. There we go. I want you to see the numbers behind this. 44% of the country thinks that America is full of injustice and inequality that holds too many people back. And only just over half think that this country gives people a fair chance to get ahead if they work hard and take responsibility. Do you realize what this means? The people themselves, and this is the highest percentage, is among 18 and 29-year-olds, those with a future ahead of them. And they believe that they don't have a fair future. So I need to do this because there's a gentleman who is clearly filming me right here. And I saw what happened with Kevin McCarthy. Did you all see that today? They took that recording of him and they put it out, and it undercuts his situation. So I promise not to tell the IRS that I see that you're not paying your taxes. I saw your form, and I know your Social Security number. We'll keep it between us if you turn that off. But it actually is, and he's still holding it up. And it actually is dangerous now. This is the kind of life that we live. We're not trying to figure out how to get along. We're not trying to figure out how to cooperate or compromise. We are so at each other to own each other. And the worst thing of all is social media. And I don't know how many of you have kids or grandkids are on it, but I'll tell you something. It is toxic. It is poison. And when you ask me, how do we fix this? You tell me how we fix social media, and I'll fix society. And until we fix social media, I can't. So I'm going to get to the data, and I'm going to get to the language. But our people on Capitol Hill, you meet with so many senators, so many congressmen. Are they any more receptive today than they were in the past, or are they more hostile to you now?
Yeah, they are more receptive in this sense, is that they understand now family businesses, because we've been working for years to explain the economic impact. I talked about this a little on Wednesday, that family businesses generate 59% of the workforce in this country, or 83 million jobs. So when you go and say, talk to them in that context, do you understand the damage that you're doing not just to individuals, but to employees and the economy and the GDP? They are understanding it better, but you know this political climate is so toxic. I mean, they used to make deals when we started working on this, when we started working in DC, they used to make deals together and then legislation would happen. And now they don't even talk to each other. They hardly say hello as they're passing in the hallways. So we, as people that are trying to get something done, we have to work with what we have. And that's why we work with a lot of Democrats right now, because Democrats are in control. But I think the difficulty isn't just with Congress, it's with the voters, as you talked about. The polling that we did last August, 40% of Democrats in this country said this country has failed them. And only 42% of Republicans believe this country is exceptional. That's what we're dealing with. It's sad, and I don't know how we change that. And to go back to your comment about appealing to this audience to tell their stories, you know, Frank, I asked him a question on one of our quarterly calls last year. How do we get the positive message around the successful in this country out? And his response, which was a great response, was you need to tell the stories. You all need to talk about your success. You need to share your family business story or your entrepreneurial story. And so we've done videos. We only have 4 of them because families are private. Family businesses are private. And so it's really unfortunate because that is the answer. We've done a lot with those videos. And members of Congress actually do pay attention. When they hear the real stories, I can give them data all day long, but it's not as powerful as the stories. So unless we perpetuate success in this country as a good thing, as a positive thing, and we not only encourage it, but we broadcast it, and we talk about it, and we go public, it's not going to change.
The most, other than farming, which is a separate profession, there is one business that is more trusted than any other. It is dangerous for me to walk around, but what profession would you think that is? If you have one of these as a business owner, people love you. What would you guess? Nonprofit, but the problem is because it's nonprofit, they're not making that much money. Lawyers? Who said lawyers? Get out. Okay, clearly you should not be drinking this early in the daytime. And you said CPA? Yeah. Did you go to college? I don't know, it's CPA, they can't even spell their occupation. Another one. Nurse, but you gotta have some money. An entrepreneur is, it's a specific business that I wish, who said restaurant? This person deserves free entry to this program right here. And by the way, if you want to go and slap him, I will pay you double for that. I have to use my language carefully, but lawyer my ass, please. It is, because we all know a restaurant. We all know a restaurant owner, and probably they were born in another country. And we know that they're the first to work every day, they're the last to leave, and they're the last to get paid. That's what makes them a hero. And probably their 4 kids are working in the restaurant, and 3 of their grandchildren are getting ready to work in the restaurant. They have such an amazing work ethic. And you get to know them by name. And on your birthday, they know when it is, and they celebrate with you. It's such a great profession. It's how we change the image of successful people. But I can't get them to do it because they're working too hard. And they're struggling right now. And for a typical restaurant or a hotel like this, you know how hard it is to get people to help. They're now paying, they used to pay $7, $8 an hour, $9 an hour. They're paying $15 an hour, giving people a $500 bonus to sign up, and they still can't put people in the kitchen. You know why? Because this government paid people to stay home. This government gave people checks, and in 2 years, they killed our work ethic. And I don't know how we go back. And by the way, this isn't Republican or Democrat. It doesn't matter. By the way, as I tell people wherever I go, there are Republicans. Actually, no, I screwed up the joke. God damn it. There are Democrats and there are Americans, and we all have to learn to get along. And so it's a challenge. Put the slides back up. By a majority. We think we pay more in taxes by what we get back in public services. Probably all of you would agree with that. But I want to get to the language. Oh.
Yeah, this is the language.
A generationally owned family business is the best way to communicate when you want to represent the challenges that this industry is facing. A business that is passed down from generation to generation. Please, for those of you taking notes, write that down. Now, there's a whole bunch of people clearly at work in the back table, the center right there. If you guys can get your cameras down low enough to film what's on their computer screens, I'd love you to pull it up, because that would be fascinating to me as the computer goes down. So you should know that I was watching Barack Obama speak. This really happened. It was 2009. He'd been elected president. He's at the Republican retreat. And I'm taking notes about what he's saying to give to the Republicans. I'm not nearly as partisan as I used to be. And he sees me in the audience, and he says, there's Frank Luntz. He's taking notes. He's probably figuring out how he's going to turn my words against me. And the truth was, I was. And I'm thinking, how the fuck do you know this? And then I realized you've got Secret Service, and there are probably people around that are looking. And so he points me out. I casually put down the screen because it all had been written there. But I just want you camera guys to know that his screen will come up because I know he doesn't have the discipline to keep it down for more than 5 minutes. So when it comes up, if you can get that camera on the computer screen, I'll pay you guys $100. Let's go back up here.
This is a really important point.
A lifetime
the
of savings.
voters understand that last point, though, the generationally owned family businesses. The voters get it. They understand that you create their jobs. So we've changed all our language, and this is also very important.
It's a lifetime of savings. It's not that you've earned it. It's not that you deserve it. It's not even a nest egg. It's a lifetime of savings from a business that you pass down from generation to generation. Do any of you represent a business that's a second or third or fourth or fifth generation business? I'm just curious. You don't have to name it, but what industry is it in?
It's in real estate as well as industrial. It's not cool. It's number one.
And then there's someone else to it. Restaurant. Seriously, stand up. Our job is to not let him out of this room. I'm curious, is it a restaurant that we all would know?
Oh, yeah, Taco Bell.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Okay, sit your ass back down. You matter. I'm serious now. Of all the people in this room, you matter the most, as the computers go down now on this table. Are you figuring out what taco, because I saw you before when I was standing up over here, and there was a whole conversation going on here, and your computers are up. Are you guys figuring out, are you buying restaurants or selling restaurants?
Just sold. And buying. It's a little both.
He just sold and he's buying. What are you, Joe Biden? The person that you represent needs to tell that story, because that story will be appreciated. There are millions of people who enjoy Taco Bell every single week. And that gives us a face, it gives us a vision, it gives us someone that we can rally behind. And I know how hard the franchisees, how hard they work too. So please, when you go back, please tell that story. You'll have an impact not just on everyone in here, but everybody who wants to be in this room at some point. Let me show you, and by the way, we'll take questions in about 5 minutes. Do you find that using different language creates a different impact? And you should tell people what organization you represent.
Well, 2 organizations. Family Enterprise USA, sole purpose is to promote family businesses and their job growth in America. It's a 501c3. It's an advocacy organization. Any of you family businesses out there that want to do a video, it's very simple, want to tell your story, or you want to come to DC and tell your story, we have a whole team there. So we'd love for you to do that. And then Policy and Taxation Group, which was founded by me in 1995 to eliminate gift, estate, and generation skipping tax. But due to the current climate, we've expanded that mission, and now we represent all tax and economic issues that affect families. So, and it really, we are one of those organizations that work the Hill all the time. I live in California. I used to spend a week a month in Washington, D.C. But I have 2 law firms and 10 lawyers and a bunch of other people that help me in D.C. And it does make a difference. I mean, that's how Frank and I met. He did my very first poll ever. And we learned back then that 55% of the voters actually believed in repeal of the estate tax, and Frank coined it death tax, which was incredibly smart and successful.
You realize the estate tax is for people who have estates. It's wealthy people. The death tax is taxing people who die, and the public is completely hostile to that. It's the difference between a carbonated beverage and a sparkling beverage. It's the difference between sustainability, which is the status quo, and cleaner, safer, healthier, which is actually better. These language points do matter. And I'll actually say for Pat, I don't usually give her compliments. I usually give her heartburn. But they're afraid of you. And that's the best thing I can say about someone. When you walk into an office, they're afraid of you because they know that you come armed with information. Let's bring it back up again. These are the words. This, sir, you take a picture of it. All of you take a picture of it. This is the language that Pat and I developed, and I'll just do a few of these. Imagine is the most powerful word in the English language. When you ask people to imagine life at perfection, or imagine the American dream, let's do that one. So you knew about restaurants. If I ask you to imagine, when you think of the American dream, what do you imagine? How would you answer that?
Everyone has the right to vote, and everyone has personal civil liberties that aren't negated by the government.
When you imagine life, and when you imagine the American dream, what do you imagine?
Freedom to do what you want for yourself, your family, and for others.
One more. So I'm in the corner back there. The guy with the beard in the corner. When you imagine the American dream, what do you imagine? By the way, people do not, and I'm an example of it, no one trusts people with beards, just so you know. That's why we haven't had a president with a beard in centuries. When you imagine the American dream, what do you imagine?
Freedom to secede.
It's all positive. It's all good. We don't know if we can get there anymore. And that's probably the challenge for us, is that a third of Americans believe the American dream is dead. But that word imagine is so powerful. I urge you to use it in your lexicon. Let's go back up to the slides. By the way, I'm out here so you don't have to keep turning. Just leave the slide. I have to look at myself. It's bad enough that you all have to look at me. We don't need higher taxes. We need more accountability. If you want people not to support raising taxes on you, you have to give them an alternative. And by the way, we asked a very simple question about taxation. Which is better to address the deficit, the debt? Which should we be pursuing, ending wasteful Washington spending or raising taxes on the wealthy? It is almost 2-to-1, ending wasteful Washington spending. If we actually get our act together and communicate effectively, we would not be in the mess that we're in right now. Our language is ineffective. Our priorities are ineffective. Whenever they talk about economic growth is a term for someone from MIT. The average American knows it as a healthy economy, healthy schools, healthy workplace environment, healthy marriage, healthy families. Anything that you add the word, a healthy balance sheet, healthy skepticism, I can put it into all your language. That healthy aspect works, and it's powerful. A reward for a life well lived rather than punished at death. That is what we found is the strongest word. Why do you want to punish success? Why do you want to punish families? That's what this is about. Trying to get the politicians to actually use this is impossible. Let me stop for a second. Can Pat and I've got a whole lot more here, but can Pat or I answer a question from you, because you know how much I like it to be interactive. Yes, sir. Yeah, and by the way, what state are you from?
State?
Yep. You're from California. Why does everything bad in America start in your state?
I'm still trying to figure that out, but that's a good question you're asking. My question is, I'm for big business, I'm part of big business and all, and I don't want you to misconstrue the question I asked, thinking that I may not be. You saw some of the things, and here's what this is just my opinion, I want to get your opinion about COVID. A lot of people lost their jobs, a lot of people did different things, but another thing, they saw certain goods and services that couldn't be done without those employees. They gave them some power maybe, if they thought about it. And I can't run my company if I don't have the 200 employees, right? So they feel more powerful, and that's, I think, why you're seeing, not that I want it to happen, that's why I'm for big business, but you're seeing more interest in unions because they feel that's the only way they may be able, their importance is recognized, and I want your comment on it, and they want a bigger piece of the pie. I'm not saying they should have it, but that's it.
First thing is, it's not about business. I'm for the worker. I'm actually for the worker. Which I'm saying your language. If you say I'm for business, that means you're for the CEO. That means you're for management. I'm for the worker. And I agree with you on every issue, but I don't. For example, the Business Roundtable. It's the 100 most largest companies in America. I don't think they should be the Business Roundtable. I think they should be the Employers Roundtable because of how many people they employ. But trying to get those CEOs to change a simple title is impossible because they got to where they are by communicating a certain way and they're unwilling to change. So I get your point, and it's an accurate point. But the way that the way that we're successful is by talking about people rather than talking about business.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that, I'm surprised somebody hasn't asked this yet, but that you should talk about the midterms, because I'm sure everybody would like to know your opinion about what's going to happen in the midterm elections. You and I have had this conversation, but I think you should share it.
Next question. Okay, we'll do it by applause, so you can keep your heads down. By applause, how many of you would like to see Republicans control Congress in November? How many of you would like to see Democrats control Congress?
Pretty equal.
That's pretty equal. And here's the good news. You're both correct. I think the House goes Republican. I think the Senate stays Democrat. And the reason why the Senate stays Democrat is because of Donald Trump. And the reason why the House goes Republican is because of Donald Trump. Trump does not have the influence on House races that he does on Senate races. He is simply not as impactful because you don't know who your House candidate is. Because of redistricting, so many of the lines have changed. Kevin McCarthy has not been fighting with Donald Trump the way that Mitch McConnell has. And Trump is focused on the biggest races because he wants the attention. His endorsements on the Senate side have been harmful to the Republican efforts to get a majority. And McCarthy has been able to say to him, stay the hell out. And it's worked. And I would be shocked. I would tell you that if you want me to bet with you on the House going Republican, I will do it. But I would not bet on the Senate. And right now, if you go to the UK, the Democrats keeping control is a 50-50 bet. That is a really, really good bet. I look at the states, I look at the individual races, and I don't think the GOP has the candidates. If they had the Republican governor of Maryland running, they would win that seat. If they had the Republican governor of Arizona or New Hampshire running, if they would nominate the former Republican governor from North Carolina, they would win these seats. But they're going to nominate the candidates they want to revisit January 6th, and that's going to cost them their majority. What else? The gentleman standing in the very back. Well, the first aspect, and this is why I've given you words to use and lose, and again, you can take pictures of this. The first step is to communicate it effectively, that this is not about protecting the wealthy. We came up with the title, but it wasn't a title that I'm endorsing it, I'm actually challenging it.
Yeah.
It's not wealthy, it's success. And it's not just success, it's intergenerational. It is a dream. My father so wanted me to become a dentist. He became a dentist because his father was a dentist. And my father wanted me to be the third generation. I couldn't do it. I can't put my fingers in people's mouths and charge them for it. I figure. And the truth is, and this is really awful, I used to throw up in his chair all the time. And he was so glad to see me, and we all knew what was going to happen a half hour later. What a great guy that he was willing to put up with it. You have such a story to tell. And you don't tell it, or if you do, you don't tell it well. The second aspect is you've got to get the right people elected. And I say this to you all, and usually I end on this, but we got 20 more minutes to go, and I don't want to forget saying it. This is a great country. It still is. But we're not such a great people anymore. We look at reasons to be rude. For those of you who support Republicans or support Donald Trump, I've got a simple question. If your children came home and talked to you the way Donald Trump talks about people he doesn't like, would you be proud of them? It's not who we are. He did a lot of good things for this country, but his behavior. And this group is a civil, decent, respectful group. You'll help those who cannot help themselves. I think that the only way we change our country is by getting the right language, getting the right candidates, figuring out how to deal with social media, and actually saying to people, being willing to speak truth to power, and being willing to say, you shouldn't say that and you shouldn't do that. I think.
And meeting your legislators and telling your legislators.
And
You've
meeting,
got to talk to them. You've got to email them. You've got to call them.
and meeting them in their district, not in Washington. When you meet them in Washington, which is in some cases it's all you can do, when you meet them in Washington, you're a lobbyist. When you meet them in the district, you're a constituent. So it takes work, but that's how you do it. I love that question. Yes?
So you had said that you were having trouble getting legislators and congressmen to use the right, oops. Thank you. So you were saying that you were having trouble getting legislatures to use the right words. Why?
Yeah. I've seen it. I mean, he tells them and retells them and videos them and shows them what they're doing wrong. And they say, I don't believe you. I think I know what I'm doing, because politicians have pretty big egos, right? He's worked his whole career at doing that. And he knows this better than anyone on the planet, and they don't listen. Both parties. He's worked with both parties. There is no good answer to that.
They think they are. And they tell me, you're going to love this, you're going to love this presentation. That's cool, by the way. That is the perfect way to show this. Where we're really small, because this is my goal. When last time I spoke to you, I weighed 238 pounds. Now I weigh 191. So I want to be as small as I can get. By the way, don't applaud me. I got down to 171. The photograph that you see, that I now use as my promotional photograph, was taken at the Abraham Accords signing. And that was such a great day. The only problem was I'd listen to people who shook my hand, say, great to see you, you look wonderful. I would walk away, they'd say, is he dying? So I would hear it. People don't realize this. They think they are, but their own staff tells them you're great. And there's so many people in this country today that don't have people who tell them the truth. They tell them what they want to hear rather than what they need to hear. And I think that's why you guys keep having me back, is because I challenge you. It's not out of disrespect. It's really it's more than respect. I think you're saving the American dream. But I want to save it for everybody, not just for you. Yes, sir.
Can you talk a little bit about where you were politically? You said you're not as partisan as you used to be, and where you are and how that transition came about.
So what they did right here is that this is like the close-up when he's going to break apart, he's going to start to cry. We're going to get the narrow shot. There we go. Okay, this is the riskiest thing I will do here. Zoom in on this. I have changed, and I've changed because I teach, and I teach inner city kids, and I started to mentor inner city kids, and I know nothing about it. And my rabbi actually told me to do it, and I'm like, what do I know about these kids? I didn't grow up that way. And my rabbi said, how much worse can you be than their own families? Give it a try. I am Jewish. Is anyone here Jewish? Raise your hands. Don't raise your hands. Have you not learned anything from history? I've seen the movie. Our character doesn't live to the end. I know the truth, and I know you talk about the American dream. I know that these kids don't have the same opportunities. That's the truth. We want them to, but they really don't. They don't have the same upbringing. I don't believe you're privileged, by the way. I don't believe anyone in this room is privileged. I think that's done to insult you. I think that's done to change the order of things. But I think that they're underprivileged. I think that they don't have the same opportunities. So instead of tearing us down, which is what Black Lives Matter seems to want to do, I want to build everyone up. And in teaching in these schools, I realized that some of my stuff was crap. And I try to say to my own students, because I am afraid of our, I'm giving you a real answer here. And in my head, there's a flashing red light that's saying, stop, stop, stop. I can't stand cancel culture. And I can't stand this wokeness. And the thing is, it's not an applause line. I'll tell you something I'm going to be doing tonight. I'm having 40 students over to my house tonight, and I'm going to teach them to respect each other, to disagree passionately, to disagree over issues of race and gender and taxes and welfare and education and budgets and environment, to disagree with passion, but also always do it with respect and with decency. And and by the way, that got less applause than the woke, and that is an example of, we will applaud that which is controversial, but we will be silent on that which we expect but don't seem to stand up for. So the more that I read and the more that I traveled, and I got sick 2 years ago, and I didn't know if I would ever be able to do sessions like this. This is, by the way, she knows this. This is the first time I've actually walked among the tables, because I'm afraid that I'm unstable. I am not drunk. I do not drink, but I don't have sure footing anymore. So for me to get up was in my head. I don't want to be this far. Why is this? Why are we this far from them? Why are you in the back sitting all the way the hell out there? You can come. There is no one in the... Why?
So you won't call on us.
Yeah.
Stand up. Sit down. I want to engage you, and I know you want to engage me. So I don't let my students do this. Whoever sits in the back, I actually reseat them in the front, because I know that they want to disengage, and I don't let them. Through this teaching, I learned. Through these kinds of engagements, I changed. And so I'll give you 3 examples. On COVID, I see there are only a couple of people here with masks. I'm grateful for the masks to be off. I work with the Biden administration on getting people vaccinated because it's the right thing to do. And Tucker Carlson did a 17-minute segment on me calling me a traitor. Well, screw him. Fuck him. I didn't behave right. So I now need to help others who don't want to get vaccinated, don't want a booster, to do the right thing. On immigration, we have a problem in the system and we have a problem in security. And so I worked to achieve a compromise. Dreamers came here through no fault of their own. They're American. They don't speak Spanish, many of them. They don't know, if you said, go back home to where you come from, they don't know where they came from. They're as American as anyone in this room. So I want to give them citizenship, and in return, I want to build a barrier at the border. Because I don't want to encourage people to come here legally. I want them to come here for the right reasons and come here in the right way. Well, that was too much for those on the right. And as far as climate, I believe, and I was the guy who changed global warming to climate change 21 years ago. But I changed 10 years ago. And I've been working with the climate people ever since then, and I went to Scotland on my own dime, and I went to present to John Kerry, who ran as a Democrat for president, to help him achieve his mission of getting the world to pay attention to climate and making those policies that will change how we live so we get to live for generation after generation after generation. I have changed. And if I can change, so can my students.
So talk about, your students have been very impactful, but you travel the world now. Teaching is your real passion. All over the world you teach students.
I'm Jewish, and I teach at the Vatican. That's a kick.
And they have had a significant impact, but talk to us about how students in other countries are different than here in the United States.
They don't understand why we take everything for granted. They don't understand why we are so mean and cruel to each other. They used to think America is the land of opportunity, land of hope, and they all wanted to maybe not live here, but they wanted to experience here. And now a whole lot of them don't. And they saw what happened on January 6th. Sorry, Trump people, but I was there and I saw the crap at the Capitol and I went home. And later that night, I was in the building that evening. I never dreamed that could happen in America. And the students tell me that we're not the same country. And I listen to them because they've got a perspective. And when they talk to me, it's not trying to make a case. It's not trying to make a difference. By the way, that's one thing I tell you all to write down. Don't make a statement, make a difference. That should be your mission in life, particularly those of you in this room. But in teaching, I've learned, I used to do, you know my religion, I used to work very hard to promote the case for Israel. I now promote the case for Palestine. And I'm going to say this with what's going on right now with Hamas and Hezbollah. I promote a case for the Palestinian state as well. I think the Abraham Accords is brilliant, and I think that the world is ready to start working together if we just can get over some of these extremists who want to ruin it for the rest of us. What is happening in Russia is not a crime, it is a crime against humanity. And the destruction, please see the videos. Look at the pictures, don't just read about it, because this is how Hitler started. This is what he did when those tanks rolled from Germany into when they rolled east and when they rolled west. And he started doing the same things that Putin is doing right now. And we better wake up. I don't want to see you a year from now. And some of you ask me why we didn't do enough. We don't have to send our troops. They're not asking for that. All they're asking for is the equipment to defend themselves. And what the hell is it taking so long for us to do?
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I've changed.
I have a question back there. He's had his hand up.
Actually, let me go over here because I'm going, I'll go back to you in 1 second because she's there with the mic.
Thank you. Is this on? Oh, sorry. Okay, so this is a very interesting bookend conversation to this morning's sessions. We started learning about philanthropies and giving examples of different organizations in which one can invest, right? So listening to this conversation now, it's making me wonder, where does philanthropy fit in this topic?
Everywhere. What good is having money? The greatest change for me happened when I sold my business, because then I got a chance to give away more money than I was making. And I realized that it is so much cooler to make someone's life special than it is to make my own life special. I don't want a birthday present. I don't want to be recognized. I want to do something so that these kids, and I'm telling you, so I'm going to make a case, Verbum Day, write it down, use my name. For those of you in Southern California, this school is working for these kids. These kids aren't resentful, although they've had a horrible life. These kids are optimistic, although all around them people are getting shot and killed. I'm going to get these kids, I'm taking these kids to Washington for a week, and I'm thinking to myself, why am I taking them to Washington, D.C.? The absolute worst place to teach morality and decency and respect. But I want them to learn about their government. I want to give them these tools. Philanthropy is everything, but don't think that writing a check makes a difference. It is your time and your wisdom and your effort. And it's not just the child, it's the child's parents and brothers and sisters and grandparents and cousins and nieces and nephews. It's the entire community that matters. Please write the checks, but give of yourself too.
And I would add to that, most people think of philanthropy as social causes, okay? At Family Enterprise USA, we happen to be a 501c3. We focus on economic causes. And that doesn't get enough attention in the philanthropic world. It's like nobody remembers that. You know, if we don't have these for-profit organizations that are the engine that promote and give to the not-for-profits, where are we going to be? So don't forget those organizations that actually generate, that are not-for-profits, that work on economic issues.
Yes.
Yeah.
But stop with this woke crap. And if you are funding a university that is allowing teachers to shut down students, if you're funding a university that doesn't let people of a differing point of view speak and won't protect freedom of speech, and you fund that university, you're paying for woke, and you're going to pay dearly over the decades to come. Stop giving to places that don't believe in the Constitution and don't give children the freedom to voice their point of view. I would invite you over to my house, and I've got a nice room for this, but I can't fit the students and you. I don't know what's going to happen. I want to tell them who's coming, but I'm so afraid it's going to get out. No?
No.
I've got someone really cool. They're going to be filmed for a TV show. And I'm really and I want them to have something that they can point when they apply for a job with you all. That they can say, this is how I speak in public, this is how I respect other people, and so they'll get a job from this. But I got to tell you, Yale Law School sucks. It is a horrible place. Harvard undergrad, if you are right of center at Harvard, if you support George Will, if you support Bill Kristol, these are not Trumpian people, you're still going to get shouted down. It shouldn't be that way in this country. Okay.
So you have the gentleman back there.
By the way, you choose the last three people.
Okay, so the man who's been having his hand up the whole time. Yes, you, sir.
Hi, thank you. I'm Bob. I wanted to say I'm glad you're healthy. I was very disappointed when I heard about your illness, and please stay well. We love you.
Yes.
Hold on, are you the Taco Bell guy?
My question is this.
No.
Where's the Taco Bell guy?
Pardon me?
Oh, he's over there. Okay, if you want to do me a favor, get me like a month's supply of Taco Bell. I would really appreciate it. No, don't give the mic back. Hold on, he hasn't asked the question
He
yet.
hasn't asked the question.
How do you get the politicians when nobody wants those jobs?
Oh, you can't. But here's the problem. My young student, the students I get to know, and they tell me they want to run for office, I can't in good conscience encourage them to do it. I know how important it is to have the next generation, but I know that it's going to ruin their lives. You have no idea how bad the marriages are of our senators and congressmen, of how horrible it is for our governors and mayors in this environment that we live in right now. Everyone's looking for scandal. No one trusts anyone. People will pull over the car to yell obscenities at elected officials. So I can't find those. I don't want to put my friends and the students that I'm responsible for in harm's way. So we got to fix the system if we're going to get better people to run for office. Your question, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? They both got to come together.
Go ahead. Oh.
Hi. You mentioned that privilege is an insult, but we use words like underserved and we use words like underprivileged. Wouldn't that mean that there are people then that are served? And then in turn, wouldn't that mean that there are also people then that are privileged if there are groups of people that are underserved or underprivileged?
Yes, absolutely. And I want to make sure, I want to bring everyone up. And the problem with our discourse right now in America is that there are too many people who want to bring others down, that they seek to own. This is, it's happened on the right with populism. How often did Donald Trump actually compliment someone for doing something good? He was always resentful and insulting about everything that he criticized. There is something called the golden rule. Treat people the way you want to be treated. It's simple. It's easy. These are not, I'm not asking for too much. I'm just asking for common decency. And you don't get it by knocking off people. You get it by giving everyone an equal opportunity. And by the way, we're not all going to turn out equal. That doesn't happen. You've got skills I don't have. You've got capabilities. You pronounce better than I do. I can't, there's nothing I can do. But I want to make sure that everyone has that opportunity, and I'm going to fight like hell against language that in any way seeks to divide us. I think there are enough reasons for why we are different. We all know them. Let's find those commonalities that bring us together. I really... Yes, and I'll give you an example. I want to promote equity. I want to promote equity. And I know that if you use the word equity, every Republican's ears turn off. So if I want to see equity in the Ohio legislature, this is a specific place and a specific state. We'll do one more question, by the way. If I want to get if I don't get dollars into the communities that don't have them, I know, don't use the word equity, use the word opportunity. And here's the problem. I got all these groups that say they support equity, all these groups that are raising from philanthropic groups millions of dollars, and they keep promoting equity. And I keep saying to them, that's ineffective. You're not going to get your legislation through. Stop doing it. Stop talking. If you believe in equity, stop talking about it and actually make it happen. And you know what? They don't. I had a session, and maybe because I'm impatient now, where every single person on the Zoom had to be introduced. It took 10 minutes of a 15-minute meeting. I'm never going to see these people again. I don't care what their names are. I don't care what their background is. I want them to get equity. But the person in charge was so determined that the individual insisted that I know every person. And we got nothing done. Once again, you all, don't make a statement, make a difference. Who gets the last question?
One last question. Right there. You. Sorry, I can't see your badge. So. Yep. Young lady in the black.
Hi there. Thank you both for being up there and taking these questions. So we talk about accountability. Congress has a rough, depending on when you look, a 20% approval rating, but a 90% reelection rate.
Lower. It's actually lower now.
Why do we keep electing these people? Because like you, I believe in the American. I trust that Americans as a whole, we would not run our country the way that our politicians are currently running our country if the American people were actually at the wheel.
If a member of Congress comes to you and asks you for a job, don't give it to them. Because we know what the result has been. And the fact is there's one organization, which is the first one that got your data, the one that was interested in it more than anyone else, was the Problem Solvers Caucus. They're not Republican first, Democrat first. They're representatives first. Half Democrats, half Republicans. So you'll be happy with half of them and unhappy with half of them. But they want to know what I presented them 3 times in 2022 already, because they so want to know how they can make a difference. They so want to understand what's happening right now. And that's the answer, and that's the solution.
And if you're not familiar with that organization, so Problem Solvers Caucus is a congressional caucus of about 100 Democrats, Republicans, House and Senate, that work together to make bipartisan legislation happen. We work with a lot of those members. It's really, really important. The concept was started by an organization called No Labels, which is a not-for-profit economic organization. If it wasn't for No Labels, the Congressional Caucus wouldn't exist today. We're in the process of forming a Congressional Family Business Caucus. That's kind of the way it works. So I agree with Frank. You got to vote for those people that are going to promote and believe in your values and your interests. It's really important. But I would also say that, remember, Congress isn't a business. It's not run like a business at all. I mean, who does a 1-year budget and has no 5-year plan or any kind of plan? That's the way the Congress is run. So, it's very frustrating to me as a business person, because when I started working in DC, I said, what's our goals and objectives? What's our game plan? And how are we going to get there? And then I realized after 25 years, that's not the way it works. So, I still run my business as a business, but it's very difficult when you're working with an organization that isn't a business. I think
when you guys were done, and I know we're standing between you and food, which is a very dangerous, by the way, the most dangerous place in America is 12 feet between Chris Christie and that buffet over there. You guys have always been kind to me, and you've always asked the best questions, and I really appreciate it. And I know that I should be more optimistic, but as I'm gathered out there and I'm asking, what should I do? Every single person said to me the point that the gentleman over there said, which is tell the truth. If you don't want this to be the truth, it's up to you to change.